Since the passing of my dad, my colleague, and my dear friend John Robbins on June 11th, I've been reflecting a great deal on his legacy, including the many gifts that he's given me. And in some ways, some of the greatest gifts that he gave me in his life on earth were his evolution, and even some of the ways that he worked with his traumas, and even some of the ways that those traumas created traumas in my life, and the ways that over the course of time, he atoned and he evolved and he apologized. And so I want to just give you a little picture of this man. Like, he grew up as a fighter. His identity was that his survival depended on his ability to be me against the world. And he won the national championship in high school in debate, as a teen. And he had this incredible ability to win arguments and to be in arguments and win them without anyone else even realizing they were in an argument, because he just would be spellbinding in his capacity to convince people of things. And he had also this a tremendous need to be right. I think he grew up in a family where being right was critical to survival on the pecking order. And so he wanted to fervently believe that he was right about everything. And deep down, of course, whenever someone does that, underneath that, there's a fear that they're wrong or bad, and they're trying to convince the world otherwise for their own survival. So he had all those dynamics and patterns inside of him, and also this brilliant wisdom and insight and capacity to spellbindingly advocate for what he believed. So all that to say that it seemed like for many years in my childhood and upbringing, my dad was always right about everything, and I don't know that I often heard the words "I'm sorry" from him. And he also was fervent and passionate, and but also had a real fear of being vulnerable. So he certainly said thank you, but it was more often transactional, like "thank you for doing what I wanted," than a really deep, vulnerable, heartfelt thank you. And as the years went by, this man who was a fighter, who was feisty and passionate and strong and bold and confident on the outside, and had a scared little boy on the inside, became more whole. And I watched as he, in many ways, softened and deepened. And later in life, especially in his last 5 or 10 years, as he undertook a great deal of therapy, "I'm sorry" came to him so readily. And near the end, I felt that in many ways he was deeply committed to seeing the ways that he might have impacted me, that might have been painful or harmful along the way, and making amends. Like, deeply committed to that. And I told him in the last week of his life, I said that in some ways, that commitment to atoning, to making amends, to cleaning up, to healing, to reconciling what injuries, pains caused, he had brought along the way, was perhaps his greatest gift to me. Because we all cause harm at times in our lives, whether we want to or not. And let's just assume nobody really wants to, but we all do sometimes, right? And yet, can we face that with a full open heart without going into shame cycles and guilt cycles or defensiveness, but actually hear and hold, yes, sometimes human beings hurt each other. Sometimes we cause harm. And can we hear that and hold that and let our hearts be big enough to feel that and have a love that says, yes, this happened. No, it's not what I would have wanted. Yes, I'm doing what I can to clean it up. And there's love that holds it all. Compassion, self-love, and love for others. That's what I felt from my dad. Not in every domain. He didn't clean every single last vestige up, but at a really deep level, he made friends with the words, "I'm sorry." And he also made friends with the words, "thank you." Towards the end of his life, as he became more vulnerable and more dependent on others, his gratitude was so deep and so sincere and so open-hearted. And then also, as he made requests, he used the word "please" with such a softness and such a gentleness. Not an obligation, not an expectation. If you really love me, you do this, but I'll use the word "please" because I have good manners. No, a sincere kind of please. I do remember just a little anecdote. One time my son Bodhi was about 5 and 6 years old, and my dad said, "You know what please means?" And Bodhi says, "Yes, I do." And my dad says, "What?" And Bodhi says, "It means do it faster." We always joked about that. But there is a way that sometimes please becomes a means to an end. But towards the end of his life, my dad would say, please, with such an open heart, would you please do this for me? And there was no obligation, there was no assumption. There was just an invitation and a tender vulnerability. And then there was a thank you, such a deep sense of gratitude. I felt his gratitude. I felt that I mattered to him, and it meant so much to me. So these are simple words, please, I'm sorry, thank you, but they can mean so much.